Good morning everyone. Today I'll be taking you towards anatomy of the uveal tract. It's a short presentation. So what is uvea? Uvea is the middle vascular coat of the eyeball. It lies between the sclera and the retina. So it has three parts, namely the iris, ciliary body and choroid. So in this picture, we can see all the three parts of the uvea. First one is the iris, and this structure is the ciliary body, and the thing which continues behind the retina is the choroid. First, let us see about iris. Iris is the anterior most part of the uveal tract. It is a thin circular disc, and in the center it has an aperture called the pupil. At its periphery, the iris is attached to the middle of the anterior surface of the ciliary body. And the iris also divides the space between the cornea and the lens into anterior and posterior chambers. This is the macroscopic appearance of the iris. It is divided into two zones, the pupillary zone, which is adjacent to the pupil, and the ciliary zone. Ciliary zone consists of series of radial streaks due to underlying radial blood vessels and crypts, which are depressions where the superficial layer of the iris is missing. And the pupillary zone, this is the part of the iris which lies between the collarette. This is the collarette and the pigmented pupillary frill and is relatively smooth and flat structure. The microscopic structure of the iris includes four layers: anterior limiting layer, iris stroma, anterior epithelial layer and posterior pigmented epithelial layer. Anterior limiting layer, it is the anterior most condensed part of the stroma. It consists of melanocytes and fibroblasts, and the definitive color of the iris depends on this layer. It can be either blue, brown or green. Iris stroma. Iris stroma consists of loosely arranged collagenous network in which are embedded the sphincter pupillae, dilator pupillae, vessels, nerves, pigment cells and other cells. Next comes the anterior epithelial layer. It is the anterior most continuation of the pigment epithelium of the retina and the ciliary body. And the posterior most structure is the posterior pigmented epithelial layer, and it is the anterior continuation of the non-pigmented epithelium of the ciliary body. And at the pupillary margin, it forms the pigmented frill. Sphincter pupillae and dilator pupillae. These are sphincter pupillae is a broad circular band in the pupillary part of the iris, and it is supplied by the parasympathetic nerve fibers through the third cranial nerve, that is oculomotor nerve, and its function is to constrict the pupil. Dilator pupillae lies in the ciliary zone of the iris, and it is supplied by cervical sympathetic nerve, and its role is to dilate the pupil. What is the function of the iris? Function of the iris is to regulate the entry of light into the eye by changing the size of the pupillary aperture by means of sphincter pupillae and dilator pupillae, and it also cuts away the peripheral aberrations so that we see better. Second part of the uvea is the ciliary body. Ciliary body is the anterior most continuation of the choroid at the level of the ora serrata. It's a ring-shaped structure. It is 6 mm in length. It extends from the ora serrata, this is the ora serrata, to the scleral spur. So the longitudinal section is triangular in shape. Iris is attached to the base of the ciliary body, and an anterior side of the ciliary body forms the angle structures. The macroscopically, it is divided into two parts, pars plicata and pars plana. So the pars plicata is the anterior most part of the ciliary body. It is 2 mm in length, and it has 70 to 80 ciliary processes. These are the ciliary processes which secretes the aqueous humor. And posterior part is called as the pars plana, which is 4 mm in length, and the retina is absent in this area. So this is the most preferred site for doing vitreous procedures. Microscopic structure consists of 5 layers: supraciliary lamina, stroma of the ciliary body, layer of pigmented epithelium, layer of non-pigmented epithelium, and internal limiting membrane. Supraciliary lamina is the outermost layer, and it consists of pigmented collagen fibers. Next comes the stroma. It consists of collagen, fibroblast, and in it is embedded the ciliary muscle, vessels, nerves, pigment, and other cells. Then comes the layer of pigmented epithelium. It's a forward continuation of the retinal pigment epithelium, and it has the layer of non-pigmented epithelium. It is mainly columnar or sometimes cuboidal, and it is the forward continuation of the sensory retina. And the innermost is the internal limiting membrane, and it is the continuation of the internal limiting membrane of the retina. Ciliary muscle, which is the important structure in the ciliary body, and it is a non-striated muscle supplied by parasympathetic fibers through short ciliary nerves. It has three parts: longitudinal fibers, circular fibers, and radial fibers. Longitudinal fibers helps in aqueous outflow, circular fibers helps in accommodation, and radial fibers also helps in aqueous outflow. What are the functions of the ciliary body? It is the formation of aqueous humor, and ciliary muscles helps in accommodation also, and it also helps in the drainage of aqueous at the angle of the anterior chamber. Next comes the innermost structure, that is the choroid. Choroid is the posterior most part of the uvea. It extends from the optic disc posteriorly to the ora serrata. So this is the optic disc from here till here, that is near the ora serrata. This is the extension of the choroid. Its inner surface is brown and lies in contact with the pigment epithelium of the retina, and the outer surface lies in contact with the sclera. So it is an analog of bioarachnoid of the brain, and it serves the same purpose of supplying nutrition to the neural portion of the eye, that is the retina. Microscopic structure consists of three layers: suprachoroidal lamina, stroma, and basal lamina. Suprachoroidal lamina is the thin membrane of condensed collagen, melanocytes, and fibroblasts. The potential space between this structure and the sclera is called as the suprachoroidal space, and it can have fluid collection in it. Stroma of the choroid, it consists of loose collagenous tissue with some elastic and reticulum fibers containing the pigment and plasma cells. In addition, vessels are also found in this layer, and these vessels are arranged in three layers, that is, outermost layer of large vessels called the thallus layer, and comes the layer of medium vessels, and it is called as the Sattler's layer, and the layer of choriocapillaries. And basal lamina, it is also called as the Brooks membrane, and it is also contains choriocapillaries. Coming to the blood supply of the uvea. So arterial supply is through short posterior ciliary artery, long posterior ciliary artery, and anterior ciliary artery. Short posterior ciliary artery arises as two trunks from the ophthalmic artery. Each trunk divides into 10 to 20 branches, and it supplies choroid in a segmental manner. And long posterior ciliary artery are two in number, that is nasal and temporal. They run in the suprachoroidal space and reach the ciliary muscle. Here the two posterior ciliary arteries anastomose with each other and also with the anterior ciliary arteries and give rise to branches which supply the ciliary body. Anterior ciliary arteries are derived from the muscular branches of the ophthalmic artery. They enter the ciliary muscle near the limbus, and they anastomose with the long posterior ciliary arteries and forms a circular arteriosus major near the root of the iris. From this arteriosus major circle, vessels arise and they run radially towards the pupillary margin, and they anastomose with each other and form circulus arteriosus minor near the pupillary margin. Venous drainage. So a series of small veins which drain blood from the iris, ciliary body, and choroid all join together to form the vortex veins. Vortex veins are four in number, namely superior temporal, superior nasal, and inferior nasal. And all these drain into the superior and inferior ophthalmic veins, which in turn drains into the cavernous sinus. So that is about anatomy of the uveal tract. Thank you.